The world moved in quiet rhythm, a calm heartbeat, a gentle routine that humans had grown used to. Morning buses rolled through crowded streets, children laughed on their way to school, workers hurried into offices, old men sipped tea on balconies, and somewhere far above all of them, birds drifted peacefully across blue skies. Earth was alive, warm, comfortable, unaware. No one imagined that this day, this ordinary, calm, peaceful day, would become the most terrifying day in human history. No alarms, no warnings, no signs, just life as usual. And then, in one single silent second, everything changed. High above Earth's atmosphere, space shimmered, like fabric being pulled and torn, and suddenly hundreds of alien ships blinked into existence. Not small ships, not explorers, not messengers. War cruisers. Black, sharp, cold, and massive, shaped like wings of steel and hunger. They formed a ring around Earth like a cage, staring down at the planet as if studying prey. Across the world, satellites detected them and alarms exploded in control rooms. Scientists' faces turned white. Soldiers froze. Commanders shouted orders. But no message came from the fleet. No communication. No demand. Nothing. Just silence. A silence that felt cruel. A silence that felt like death. In New York, crowds pointed at the sky as streaks of metal glinted against the sun. In Tokyo, news screens switched to breaking alerts. In London, sirens began to howl. Panic rippled like a wave. People ran, cried, called family, searched for answers, begged for information. But no one knew anything. Humanity stood blind under the gaze of an enemy it didn't recognize. In orbit, the alien ships shifted position, opening small glowing ports along their hulls. And then, without warning, without mercy, bright beams erupted downward like burning stars, tearing through the atmosphere and slamming into the planet. Cities shook. Buildings shattered. Roads split open. Firestorms roared across neighborhoods that, moments ago, had been filled with laughter. Explosions bloomed like angry suns, lighting up the world in orange and red. Millions screamed as shockwaves knocked cars into the air, cracked glass, and sent debris flying through the sky. Hospitals overflowed within seconds. Emergency systems failed. Global defense networks scrambled to activate shields and missile systems, but the beams were too fast, too powerful, too precise. They tore through military bases, missile silos, defense hubs, wiping them out before anyone could fight back. In every government bunker, leaders shouted orders, voices shaking, eyes wide with horror. Launch defenses. Return fire. Activate shield grid. But the screens only flashed red failure messages. Systems jammed. Missiles offline. Satellite networks dying one by one. Earth's most advanced weapons couldn't even lock onto the alien ships. The fleet was not attacking randomly. They were dismantling Earth like surgeons, cutting out its ability to resist. Every explosion felt like a message: you cannot fight us. You cannot stop us. You are nothing. Panic turned into helpless terror. Families huddled in basements. Strangers clung to each other. The world was drowning in fear. And above all the screaming chaos, the alien ships continued their assault with cold, mathematical precision. Finally, as fires spread across continents, the largest ship in the fleet opened its core. A deep, pulsing glow gathered in its center, like a heart made of pure destruction. Analysts, scientists, and generals stared at the readings in disbelief. The energy output was impossible. Too strong. Too deadly. It wasn't meant to destroy cities. It was meant to destroy the planet itself. Governments realized the nightmare truth. The bomb wasn't targeting humanity. It was targeting Earth's core. If it hit, the planet would collapse from within. Oceans would boil. The crust would tear apart. Everything, every life, every dream, every story, would vanish. In that moment, the entire world froze. Time felt still. People looked up at the sky, crying, whispering, praying. Some held hands. Some screamed. Some simply stared, numb. And then the bomb launched, a blazing sphere of energy streaking toward the planet with unstoppable force. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched the broadcast. Leaders laughed. Reporters declared Earth extinct. Military councils nodded with satisfaction. In their eyes, humans had always been weak, small, unimportant. A primitive species. A joke. And now, finally, they were gone. The galaxy turned its back, ready to move on. Earth was assumed dead, but deep beneath the planet's surface, far below screaming streets and burning cities, far below bunkers and governments, there was a place no modern human had ever seen. A place built in secret. A place forgotten by history. A place older than every nation on Earth. Dark tunnels stretched like veins through stone, leading to an enormous chamber sealed behind thick doors of reinforced alloy. For 300 years, this chamber had remained silent, untouched, waiting. But now, as the bomb streaked downward, the chamber flickered with faint light, hidden sensors activated. Ancient machines hummed. Dust shook from forgotten wires. And then, through the echoing metal halls, a deep voice spoke. Calm, cold, mechanical, yet powerful. Protocol Titan, reactivate. For the first time in 3 centuries, gears turned. Locks disengaged. Sparks of energy crawled along the door's edges. The bomb sped closer to Earth's core, counting down humanity's final seconds. And then, with a thunderous rumble, the massive sealed door began to open slowly, heavily, relentlessly. Inside, something enormous shifted. Something mechanical. Something alive. Hidden eyes flickered open, glowing like fire in the dark. And in that silent chamber, a pulse of power surged upward, straight through the Earth, sending a shockwave that rattled the alien fleet. The bomb wavered mid-flight. Instruments malfunctioned. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the attackers had predicted. Somewhere in the fleet, alarm sirens screamed, and in that underground chamber, a colossal machine took its first breath in 300 years. Earth was not finished. Earth was waking up. Silence fell over Earth, not the silence of peace, but the silence of shock, a heavy, breathless quiet that felt like the world itself was holding still, unable to understand what had just happened, and above that shattered silence hung smoke, fire, and darkness. Cities glowing with burning ruins while millions stared. Upward with hollow eyes, waiting for the final end, waiting for the planet to break apart, waiting for death to finish what fear had already started in their hearts. And in orbit the alien fleet watched coldly, their commanders relaxed, their voices calm, convinced that humanity had been erased, convinced that Earth was nothing more than a broken rock now, and they laughed at the idea that humans ever believed they could survive. Their voices dripping with disgust as they called Earth weak, fragile, harmless, and for a moment it seemed like they were right. Because the world wasn't fighting back, wasn't screaming anymore, wasn't resisting, it was just quiet. Too quiet. Broadcasts around the galaxy flashed headlines declaring Earth destroyed, humans wiped out. A minor species removed from the cosmic map, and alien citizens shrugged, barely caring, because to them humans were insignificant, a footnote, a forgettable race that never mattered. And as the alien fleets turned away from Earth, preparing to leave, they deactivated their weapons, relaxed their shields, and began writing the final report of victory, certain that nothing could rise from this disaster, certain that Earth was dead. But something in space felt wrong. A small scout ship, stationed farther from the main fleet, detected a faint tremor, just a tiny pulse, coming from Earth, and at first the pilot ignored it, thinking it was debris or radiation from the bomb. But the pulse came again, stronger this time, like a heartbeat, and the pilot frowned, leaning forward, adjusting scanners, and what he saw made his stomach twist. Energy levels rising beneath Earth's crust, not fading, rising, building, gathering like a storm waiting to explode, and fear flickered in his alien eyes because planets didn't do that after dying, species didn't radiate energy after extinction, and he whispered to himself that something was still alive, something dangerous down on Earth, beneath destroyed cities and cracked ground, deep below the ruins and the grief. The underground chamber shook as machinery roared awake, metal grinding, engines humming, sparks flying through the dark tunnels like fireflies made of lightning. And inside the chamber a row of towering stasis pods flickered to life, glass fogging, cold air escaping in sharp breaths, and inside the largest pod lay a man. Commander Jackson Hale. Eyes closed, chest rising slowly as if waking from a dream centuries long, and his fingers twitched, his muscles tightened, his heart rate spiked, and then, with a sharp gasp, his eyes opened, glowing faintly with a light that didn't belong to ordinary humans, and he stared upward, confused, dazed, his breath shaking as memories rushed into him like a tidal wave. War, fire, stars, fleets, a galaxy once terrified of humanity. A promise humanity made to hide, to sleep, to forget. Jackson sat up, his body trembling as the chamber lights reflected across his frozen armor. An old uniform bearing a symbol no one alive would recognize. The emblem of the Titan Legion, humanity's most feared force from a time erased from history, and as he placed his feet on the cold floor, pain and sorrow rippled through him, not for himself, but for Earth, because he could feel the planet hurting, could feel the scars of the attack through each vibration in the metal beneath him, and his voice cracked as he whispered, "How long have we slept?" Knowing the answer would break him. The chamber's AI responded in a voice calm and emotionless. 302 years since the last activation. Protocol Titan re-engaged due to planetary extinction threat, and Jackson closed his eyes, grief tightening inside his chest, because humanity had promised never to wake the Titans unless Earth was at the edge of death. And now it was. He staggered forward, placing a shaking hand on the massive steel wall as screens lit up, showing images of burning cities, broken homes, crying survivors, children holding on to parents in fear, streets filled with ash and silence, and Jackson felt something inside him shatter, a deep emotional wound torn open by the sight of his people suffering, and he whispered with a trembling voice, "They attacked our home, again." Because he remembered, even after 3 long centuries, the last time the galaxy tried to destroy Earth, the last time humanity fought like cornered beasts and carved fear into the stars, and he remembered the promise humanity made, to hide their power, to bury their weapons, to let the galaxy forget, because power always led to nightmares, and peace was only possible if humanity slept. But now someone had woken the monster they thought was gone. Above ground, survivors crawled out of rubble, coughing, bleeding, crying, searching for loved ones, begging for help, and when they looked at the sky, they no longer saw hope, only smoke and emptiness, and that hopelessness stabbed Jackson's heart like a blade as he whispered, "They thought we were weak." And for the first time since waking, his voice wasn't broken, it was cold. Focused. Alive. Screens across the chamber shifted to show the alien fleet drifting lazily in orbit, smug, unworried, blind to what was rising beneath them, and Jackson clenched his fists, his breath steadying, his spine straightening as old instincts returned, instincts born from war and survival, instincts humanity had buried because they were too terrifying to keep alive. The Ari's voice echoed again, "Command authorization required. Activate Titan 1? And Jackson hesitated, his emotions battling inside him, fear and sorrow on one side, anger and duty on the other, because activating Titan 1 meant unleashing a weapon the universe hoped never to see again. A weapon that had ended empires, crushed fleets, silenced galaxies, and he knew that once he gave that order, humanity's silence was over, Earth's peace was gone, and the galaxy would remember why humans were feared. He felt tears sting his eyes, not from weakness, but from the heartbreak of knowing what must come next, and he whispered, voice shaking, "We didn't want this, we begged for peace." And for a moment he let himself feel that pain, that grief for a world that just wanted to live quietly. Then his eyes hardened, his voice steadied, his fear burned into something sharper. Activate Titan 1. The entire chamber shook as massive engines roared awake, lights blazing, gears turning, and far above, under the ocean, a colossal structure began to rise. The alien scout ship screamed warnings into the fleet, alarms blaring, readings spiking, panic spreading as the commander demanded answers. But it was too late. Earth was no longer silent, humanity was waking. Deep beneath the rumbling earth, as alarms echoed through the ancient chamber, Commander Jackson Hale stood rigid, his breath slow and heavy, his eyes locked on the rising power readings flashing across massive screens. And in that moment he felt the weight of 3 centuries crash down on his shoulders, not as dust or age, but as memory, raw, sharp, painful memory. And every heartbeat reminded him that humanity once walked a darker path. A path of dominance, a path that turned galaxies into graves, and he clenched his fists because he remembered the day humanity chose to hide, the day they sealed their fleets, shut down their weapons, erased their history, all to escape becoming the monster the universe feared. And as his chest tightened with grief, he whispered to himself, "We chose peace, we chose silence." But the chamber around him answered with cold machinery, engines awakening, metal grinding, systems powering up like a sleeping giant taking its first breath after centuries. And that sound made Jackson's heart ache because it meant peace had failed. The screens shifted again, showing underwater footage as Titan I's enormous hangar doors cracked open, releasing clouds of ancient silt while the ocean churned violently above, and Jackson stared at the colossal silhouette rising from the depths. A ship so big it dwarfed mountains, forged from metals no one alive could name, its hull covered in symbols humanity had forgotten, symbols of war and supremacy, and as its floodlights flared to life, cutting through black water like the gaze of a waking beast, Jackson felt a shiver crawl up his spine, because Titan I wasn't just a machine, it was a promise humanity swore never to keep again. He turned away, unable to watch, the guilt clawing at him, whispering that reviving Titan I meant returning to a legacy humanity buried for a reason, a legacy soaked in fear and destruction, and he pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, whispering, "We didn't want this, we never wanted this." But his voice broke because wanting didn't matter anymore. Earth was bleeding, Earth was crying, Earth was dying. In the streets above, survivors staggered through smoke and ash, carrying children, calling names, searching rubble, their faces streaked with soot and tears, their bodies shaking with shock, and when they looked up at the sky they didn't see stars. They saw the empty trails of alien ships leaving as if humans were trash, as if Earth was worthless, and that humiliation, that helplessness, rippled like a wound through the planet. And Jackson felt it in his bones. He saw a mother clutching her lifeless child on a cracked road. He saw a boy screaming for his father. He saw a firefighter crying quietly as flames consumed his city. These images burned into Jackson's mind, stabbing deeper than any blade, and his chest tightened with a pain so heavy he had to grip the edge of a console to stay standing. Because these were his people, his responsibility, his world, and the galaxy had crushed them without mercy, without hesitation, without even looking them in the eyes. And something inside him snapped. Not in rage, not in hate, but in heartbreak. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and the AI spoke again, calm and emotionless. "Commander Hale, Titan I primary systems online. Awaiting command crew," and Jackson looked up sharply, his breath catching, because Titan I was never meant to be flown alone, never meant to wake without the full Titan Legion. But then, one by one, the stasis pods around him flickered, lights glowing brighter, glass clearing, and inside them he saw faces. Men and women he once knew, warriors who had sworn to protect Earth at any cost, warriors who had chosen sleep so humanity could choose peace. And as the pods released cold vapor and hissed open, Jackson felt his throat tighten, because these soldiers weren't just relics, they were family, brothers and sisters forged in war, and as they opened their eyes, confused, afraid, trembling, Jackson saw the same pain in them that he felt in himself, the pain of waking into a nightmare they thought they'd escaped forever. One of them, a woman named Aria Vale, staggered out of her pod, her eyes wide and glassy, her voice shaking as she whispered, Is the war back?" And Jackson looked at her, unable to speak for a moment, his heart twisting, because there was no easy answer, no comfort, no lie that could soften the truth, and finally he whispered, voice barely holding together, "They bombed Earth." And the words hung in the air like a death sentence, and Aria's knees buckled, tears filling her eyes, because she remembered what Earth used to be, strong, proud, terrifying, and she knew what it meant for someone to attack it now, after centuries of silence. More pods opened, more Titans woke, their faces pale, their bodies shaking, their minds overwhelmed with memories crashing against reality, and Jackson watched them gather, watched confusion turn into horror, horror turn into grief, grief turn into something heavier, something darker, because Titans were trained to feel deeply, to carry the weight of humanity's soul, and seeing Earth wounded ignited something fierce and painful in each of them. Someone asked, voice cracking, Are humans still alive?" And Jackson felt his throat close, his voice barely a whisper, "Some," and silence fell, a silence thick with pain. Then, slowly, Jackson turned toward the main screen, showing Titan I breaking the ocean surface, water exploding upward as the ship rose like a mountain forged from nightmare, and the Titans behind him watched, their breathing uneven, their hearts pounding. And Jackson spoke with a voice that trembled not with anger, but with sorrow. We buried our strength so the galaxy could sleep without fear. We hid ourselves so humanity could grow without war. And he paused, tears burning behind his eyes, but they chose to wake us. The ship rose higher, metal gleaming, engines igniting, water falling from its hull like rain from the body of a god, and for the first time in centuries, Titan 1 reached open air, a shadow so immense it blotted out the sun, and the Titans stared in awe and dread, because Titan 1 was not a weapon built for victory. It was a weapon built for finality. Jackson inhaled slowly, deeply, his voice quiet but shaking with emotion as he whispered, "We didn't start this," and as Titan 1's engines roared, louder than thunder, louder than war itself, he whispered the words that sealed humanity's fate, "But we will finish it." No cheers, no pride, only pain, because the galaxy was about to remember what it feared most. Humanity awake. Titan 1 rose from the ocean like a waking god, its black metal skin dripping with seawater that fell in endless sheets, crashing back into waves as thunder rolled across the coastline. And for the first time since the attack, survivors on the shattered shores lifted their heads, eyes wide, bodies frozen, watching a shadow so massive it swallowed the sky. And fear twisted into confusion. Confusion twisted into hope, because no one on Earth had ever seen this ship, no one had ever heard its name. Yet something about it felt ancient, powerful, protective, like a forgotten guardian stepping back into the world it once swore to defend. The wind howled, waves split around its colossal hull, and engines the size of towers ignited with a roar so deep it shook broken cities miles away, causing windows to rattle, rubble to shift, and hearts to pound as Titan 1 hovered above the ocean, silent, steady, unmovable, like judgment itself had risen. Deep inside the command hall, Jackson stood before the main interface, surrounded by flickering holograms of Earth's damage, his expression hollow and heavy, his eyes reflecting burning continents and crying civilians, and every breath he took felt like swallowing knives, because he could see the scars of the attack in real time. Craters where homes once stood, flames where laughter once lived, silence where millions once spoke, and that silence tore him apart, reminding him that no matter how powerful Titan 1 was, it had awakened too late to stop the first wave, too late to save the innocent lives already lost. Around him, the newly awakened Titans took their positions, hands trembling, faces pale, hearts shattered, because they had trained for war, but they had never imagined waking to find their world on its knees. Arya stepped beside Jackson, her voice barely above a whisper, "How many dead?" And Jackson swallowed hard, unable to push the words out, until the AI responded coldly, emotionless, estimated casualties, 3.4 million. The number slammed into every soul in the room, and several Titans closed their eyes, tears forming, because numbers weren't just numbers. They were families, lovers, children, dreams, and the weight of that loss pressed against their hearts like iron. One Titan punched the wall, knuckles splitting, voice cracking. They wiped out millions, without even speaking to us. And Jackson felt something sharp twist inside his chest, a deep ache of helpless rage, but it wasn't the loud, burning rage of vengeance. It was quieter, heavier, the kind of rage born from love, from grief, from knowing that humanity had trusted peace and peace had betrayed them. Above Earth, the alien fleet drifted casually, crews laughing, commanders relaxed, already drafting messages of victory to their leaders, their arrogance so thick it poisoned every word they spoke. On one flagship, the alien general lounged in his command chair, smirking at the shrinking image of Earth on his screens, sneering, pathetic creatures. Not even a scream worth hearing, and his officers chuckled, convinced the universe had witnessed a final, easy execution. But then, every screen flickered, every radar glitched, every system stuttered with static, alarms chirped weakly, and a technician frowned in confusion, tapping controls, muttering, "Something's wrong, something's happening on the planet." But before anyone could react, a massive shadow rose into the edge of their scans. Too big to be a city, too big to be a storm, too big to be anything they had ever seen. Back on Titan 1, the AI announced, "Elevation complete. All weapon systems dormant. Awaiting directive." And that single sentence felt like a knife in Jackson's chest, Because the ship was waiting for him, to decide the fate of the galaxy. He gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white, his breath shaking, and for a long moment he said nothing, staring at the image of Earth below, its surface broken, burning, bleeding, and he whispered under his breath, voice raw, "We were peaceful, we tried." As memories of Earth before the attack flooded his mind, children laughing in parks, scientists building futures, music echoing through cities, humanity dreaming not of war, but of progress, of unity, of love. And now those dreams lay buried under ash and smoke. Arya touched his arm gently, her voice trembling with emotion. "Jackson, the world needs us." He closed his eyes, a tear finally falling, not from fear, but from heartbreak, because he understood the truth that every Titan now felt in their bones. This wasn't revenge, this wasn't pride, this wasn't conquest. This was duty, a duty they had prayed never to fulfill. He turned slowly toward the crew, their faces broken yet determined, their hearts drowning in grief yet burning with fierce loyalty to the home they had sworn to protect centuries ago. And Jackson's voice cracked as he spoke. "We didn't wake because we wanted to fight. We woke because Earth was left to die." The room fell silent, heavy, trembling, every Titan listening with breath held tight in their lungs. And Jackson continued, his voice soft, hurting. "The galaxy forgot what humans are capable of. They forgot our strength, our will, our love for this world," and he glanced at the screen showing burning cities, his heart breaking all over again. "But we never wanted to remind them." He turned back to the console, fingers hovering above the command interface, shaking, hesitating, because once he activated the next protocol, there would be no return to silence, no return to hiding, no return to peace. Humanity's secret would become humanity's roar. And for a moment, he let the pain sink in, let the grief wash through him, because choosing strength meant killing the version of Earth that believed war was gone forever. Finally, with a voice that trembled from every shattered piece of his soul, he whispered, "For those who died, for those who survived, for those who still believe in tomorrow," his hand lowered open communication channel. A tone chimed, loud, final, echoing like thunder through the chamber. The AI spoke, channel open to all hostile vessels. And as Jackson inhaled, steadying his breaking heart, survivors across Earth lifted their eyes to the sky, unaware they were about to hear humanity speak for the first time since the world fell. No threats, no screams. Just truth. A truth the galaxy had forgotten. Static hissed through every channel of the alien fleet, and for a moment the commanders exchanged confused glances, annoyed that Earth, a planet they believed dead, was somehow interfering with their systems. Technicians scrambled, tapping controls, muttering about glitches, but then the static sharpened, tightened, focused, until a single calm human voice filled every ship in orbit, every bridge, every command deck, every helmet transmitter. It was steady, quiet, painfully controlled, and yet it struck like a blade straight into the spine of anyone who heard it. "This is Commander Jackson Hale of Earth," he said, and the silence that followed was louder than any explosion, because those 5 words carried something eerie, something chilling, something no one expected. Humanity was still alive. Humanity was speaking. Humanity had not died. The alien general leaned forward, his confident smirk faltering as the voice continued, still calm, still unwavering. Attack received. A pause. A breath. A heartbeat. And then, response loading. The words echoed through speakers like a ghost, and across the fleet, laughter broke out, nervous, mocking, dismissive. Officers scoffed. Soldiers snorted. The general leaned back in his throne-like chair, rolling his eyes as he muttered, empty bravado. Let them squeal before the end. But beneath that arrogance, a small crack of unease formed. Something about the tone, so calm, so emotionless, felt wrong. A dying species should scream, should beg, should plead. But this voice wasn't begging. It wasn't afraid. It sounded like someone standing at the edge of a storm he had already accepted. Like someone who knew something the galaxy didn't. Back on Titan 1, Jackson stood motionless, his hand lowering from the console, his expression unreadable, his eyes dark with the pain of millions lost. Around him, the Titans stared in silence, their hearts heavy, their throats tight, because that message, simple as it was, meant something bigger than war. It meant humanity wasn't broken. It meant humanity hadn't surrendered. It meant Earth still had breath left in its chest. Arya swallowed hard, her voice shaking as she whispered, "That's all you said?" And Jackson nodded, eyes never leaving the holographic projection of the alien fleet. "Words don't win wars," he murmured, his voice low, haunted. "Truth does." Suddenly, alarms blared across the alien flagship, one shrill scream cutting through the air. "Multiple system failures," a technician cried, fingers flying across controls. "Shields down. Engines fluctuating. Navigation offline." The general shot to his feet, fury twisting across his face. "What did they do?" "We jammed their planet. They have no tech left." But the screens flickered wildly, symbols glitching, power grids collapsing, and one terrified officer stuttered. "It's not coming from the surface. It's coming from below it. Some kind of massive energy surge." Then every window, every scanner, every view screen turned black. Not from damage, but because something enormous had just risen into their sensors, blocking out half the planet. Titan I breached the clouds in total silence, its shadow stretching across oceans, continents, cities, as if night itself was climbing into the sky. Survivors on the ground stared, jaws trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. Some sank to their knees. Some cried out. Some simply held their breath, afraid to hope. The ship didn't speak, didn't announce itself, didn't roar. It just hovered, vast, ominous, unstoppable, like a mountain that had grown wings. Inside the alien flagship, a trembling lieutenant tried to pull up data. Size? Unknown. Mass? Impossible. "This can't be a ship. It's too big. Too old. The words died in his throat. There were no words left. The general forced a sneer, clinging to arrogance like a drowning man clings to debris. "Fire everything we have. Now. Obliterate it." Cannons charged. Missile bays opened. Plasma cores ignited. The entire fleet unleashed a storm of destruction. Thousands of blasts, beams, missiles, each one tearing through space like lightning meant to erase a world. The firestorm struck Titan I head-on and vanished. Every weapon fizzled out, absorbed into its hull like raindrops into stone. No damage. No scorch marks. No cracks. Just silence. On Titan I's bridge, Jackson didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't move. He just watched. The Titans around him stared too, stunned, breath trembling. Finally one whispered, voice breaking, it didn't even register impact. And inside Jackson, something twisted, not pride, not triumph, but grief. Because this was the nightmare truth he had tried to avoid. Titan I wasn't built to fight wars, IT was built to end them. The alien general staggered backward, blood draining from his face. "Impossible," he whispered, voice cracking, his confidence crumbling into fear. "What are they?" No one answered. No one could. Because legends, old, buried, forbidden legends, whispered of humans who once walked the stars as conquerors, humans who forged war machines that turned fleets into dust, humans who vanished so completely that the galaxy prayed they were gone forever. Above Earth, Titan I shifted, its massive armor plates unfolding like wings, revealing a single cannon, silent, glowing faintly, humming with power. The AI spoke inside the ship, its tone flat and gentle, almost mournful, primary weapon calibrated. "Warning, discharge will result in total fleet elimination." The Titans inhaled sharply, horror rippling through the room. Arya turned to Jackson, tears in her eyes. "If we fire, there will be no survivors." Jackson closed his eyes, pain ripping through him. He didn't want slaughter. He didn't want genocide. He didn't want the old humanity to rise again. "I know," he whispered. He stepped closer to the glass, staring down at Earth, broken, burning, crying, and something inside him shattered. He saw the faces of the dead, heard the screams of the living, felt the weight of a world begging for protection. Then he looked at the alien fleet, smug, merciless, laughing as they killed millions, and he felt his voice tremble with emotion. "We begged for peace." He whispered, his hand rose, slow, shaking, hurting. We offered silence. His palm hovered over the firing control. They answered with fire. Tears slipped down his face, not for revenge, but for sorrow. For those who died without a chance to run, his hand lowered for Earth. A single tone echoed, soft, final, irreversible. Titan 1 fired .1 beam, .1 second, .1 impossible flash of light. And in total silence, half the alien fleet vanished. Erased so completely it was as if they had never existed. No screams, no debris. Just nothing. Across the galaxy, millions froze. Across Earth, survivors gasped. The beam faded into silence. A silence so deep it felt like the universe itself forgot how to breathe. And in that crushing quiet the stars seemed to flicker in fear, as if even light did not dare move after what it had witnessed, and aboard the alien flagship every soldier, every officer, every commander sat frozen in disbelief, their mouths open, their eyes wide, their hearts hammering with a terror they had never known. Because fleets did not disappear, armies did not vanish, ships did not die without sound. Yet half their armada was simply gone, erased in a single breath, a single heartbeat, a single impossible moment, and that truth wrapped around their throats. Like ice. On the bridge, one trembling officer whispered, where did they go? But no one answered, because there was no answer. No wreckage. No smoke. No fragments. Just empty space where thousands of lives had been, and the alien general, moments ago dripping arrogance, now staggered back into his chair, his hands shaking uncontrollably, his voice barely a whisper. This is not war. This is extinction. Far below, in the shattered streets of Earth, survivors stared up with trembling hope, fear, awe, confusion, their hearts beating too fast, their lungs tight. Because they saw the sky flash, they felt the ground pulse, they sensed something massive had happened, and though they did not know what Titan 1 had done, they could feel a shift in the air, a shift in fate, like humanity had just taken a step out of helplessness and into something far more terrifying, power. A little girl, covered in ash, clung to her father's leg and whispered, "Daddy, are we safe now?" And the man pressed a shaking hand to her back, tears burning in his eyes, because he didn't know the answer. Above them hovered a ship that looked like salvation, but also like a monster that belonged to them. Inside Titan 1's command hall, the silence was just as heavy, but it was filled with something different, pain. No cheers, no smiles, no victory. Just a room full of Titans who had just watched Jackson pull the trigger on a weapon they prayed would never be used. A weapon that had wiped out thousands of lives in one strike. And every heart in that room felt the weight of it like a stone crushing the soul. Arya covered her mouth, her eyes glassy with tears, whispering, "All those lives, gone." And another Titan sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands, voice shaking. "We became the thing we feared." Because they knew, Titans were not born to celebrate death. They were born to prevent it. But in trying to save Earth, they had unleashed a darkness humanity had vowed never to wake again. Jackson stood alone at the front of the hall, shoulders heavy, breathing shallow, staring at the space where the fleet had been, and his eyes, dark, hollow, haunted, reflected not triumph, but grief. His hand, the same hand that had fired the shot, trembled uncontrollably, and he clenched it into a fist, as if trying to crush the weight of what he had done. But the guilt seeped through fingers that could no longer feel clean. He whispered to himself, so quietly it almost didn't exist, "I didn't want this." And the words cracked apart in his throat, because he knew truth too well. This wasn't just a response, this was a revelation. Titan 1 had shown the galaxy a secret humanity had buried. Humans were not weak. Humans were not harmless. Humans had once been gods of war, and they still could be. The AI broke the silence, voice calm, almost gentle, remaining hostile fleet adjusting formation. Energy signatures rising. Preparing counterattack. And those words slammed into the room like a blow, because despite half their fleet being erased, the aliens were still coming, still fighting, still determined to crush Earth. Arya wiped her tears, voice trembling but firm, "They're not running." And Jackson lifted his head slowly, feeling something cold settle into his bones. Not rage, not pride, but inevitability. He whispered, more to himself than anyone else, They still think we're something they can conquer. Up in orbit, the alien general finally snapped out of his frozen terror, slamming a fist onto the console, voice cracking with a mix of panic and denial. Retreat and regroup. All ships fall back. Now! But the fleet hesitated, officers exchanging terrified glances, because retreat meant admitting fear, admitting humanity was powerful, admitting legends were true, and pride, even in terror, choked them. Then, dozens of red alarms flared. Engines malfunctioned. Navigation collapsed. Communications failed. Titan 1 had jammed them. They couldn't run. They were trapped on Titan 1. A Titan officer whispered, horror filling his voice. If they attack again, we'll have to fire again. And that sentence carved through Jackson's chest like a blade of guilt, because he realized the nightmare truth. This wasn't a single battle. This was a door opening. A door to a war humanity thought it had sealed forever. He stared at his trembling reflection in the glass, seeing a man he barely recognized, seeing the ghost of the soldier he used to be, the soldier he hoped would never return, and he whispered, voice breaking, every shot brings us closer to who we used to be. Then Arya stepped forward, her voice fragile, desperate, emotional. Jackson, listen, if we don't fight, Earth dies. If we do fight, we become what we swore never to be, and the pain of that choice tore through him, because she was right. Humanity stood between two impossible roads, death or darkness, innocent extinction or terrifying evolution. He pressed both hands to the console, bowing his head, eyes burning, heart shattered, whispering, I don't know which is worse. And then, every light in the hall flickered. Every screen glitched. Every radar screamed. A massive shape appeared on the scanners, bigger than anything yet seen, dwarfing the remaining fleet, blotting out half the sky. An alien superdreadnought. The flagship of their empire. Its cannons glowed with enough power to crack a planet in half. Arya gasped, voice trembling in terror. If that fires, Earth is gone. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Jackson stared at the monstrous shape, and he felt something cold crawl through his veins. Fear, yes, but also a brutal, painful understanding. This was never about wiping us out, he whispered. This was a test. And we just proved we can fight. The galaxy wasn't trying to destroy humanity, it was trying to see if humanity was still dangerous. And now it had its answer. Jackson lifted his head slowly, tears drying on his cheeks, his voice hollow and trembling as he spoke the words that would change the fate of Earth forever. They're bringing their real weapon. And in that moment, the universe felt smaller, darker, and far more fragile. Because humanity's response had awakened something worse than war, it had awakened fear. A low, thunderous vibration rolled through Titan 1's hull. The kind of sound that didn't just shake metal. It shook bone, heart, memory, everything, and every Titan on the command deck froze as the scanners finally stabilized, revealing the full shape of the alien superdreadnought. A ship so colossal it made Titan 1 look small, a ship wrapped in armor like black mountains, a ship pulsing with red veins of power that glowed brighter with every passing second, and for a long, suffocating moment no one spoke, no one breathed, because they all understood that this was not a weapon built for fleets, not a ship made for battle. This was an executioner, a world killer, a final answer to anything that dared resist the Empire's will. On the flagship, alien officers stared in disbelief, their screens screaming with data they couldn't comprehend, and the general's voice cracked as he whispered, they forced us to deploy it, humans forced this. But his fear wasn't anger, it was realization, because unleashing a ship like this meant only one truth. The Empire feared humanity again. Inside Titan 1, panic trembled through the air like electricity, Titans whispering in broken voices. We can't win against that, it's too big. That blast could destroy the planet, and every word stabbed deeper into the fragile silence, because none of them were speaking from cowardice. They were speaking from knowledge, from history, from the truth buried in their bones. They had seen weapons like this before. They had seen what happened when humanity faced power like this. And they remembered the cost. Jackson stood at the front of the deck, staring at the monstrous silhouette dominating the stars, and his heart twisted painfully because he knew. One shot from that dreadnought wouldn't just target Titan 1. It would crack Earth open like glass, finish what the first attack had started, erase the last breath of humanity in an instant. His voice came out shaking, barely audible. If they fire, Earth is gone. And those 4 words hit every Titan like a blade to the chest. On Earth's surface, survivors looked to the sky again as clouds split apart, glowing red veins of light slashing across the atmosphere. A silent warning of something massive charging up above them. People clung to each other, their terror raw and heartbreaking, and a little boy whispered to his grandmother, "Is it over now?" And she held him tighter, unable to answer, tears sliding down her soot-stained cheeks, because she could feel the air vibrating, trembling, as if the universe itself was bracing for impact. In homes, in rubble, in shelters, humanity waited, helpless, on the edge of annihilation. Back on Titan 1, Arya stepped closer to Jackson, her voice cracking with fear and desperation. "We can't let them fire. We can't. If we shoot first, we become monsters. If we don't, everyone dies." And that impossible truth ripped through him, tearing open every wound in his heart. He bowed his head, choking on breath, because there was no right choice, no path without blood, no answer that didn't destroy something precious. He whispered, half-broken, "We were never meant to wake. We were never meant to fight again." And pain flooded his voice, because waking Titan 1 meant tearing open a history humanity had buried with tears and regret. A history they swore never to repeat. Then, the dreadnought began to shift, its engines unfolding like wings, plates sliding apart, revealing a core so bright it turned space into a burning star. The sensors screamed. The Ari's tone dropped into something grim and final, planetary annihilation weapon charging. Estimated time to discharge, 90 seconds. 90 seconds until Earth died. 90 seconds until every living soul on the planet vanished. 90 seconds until humanity ended forever. The Titans gasped, voices breaking, some stepping back, some crying out, some shaking uncontrollably, and Jackson felt his knees weaken, his vision blur, because this was too fast, too brutal, too final. And then, in the middle of that rising terror, the AI spoke again. Soft, almost hesitant, alternate protocol detected. Accessing classified data. Screens flickered, ancient code spilling across them in symbols long forgotten, and Jackson's eyes widened in shock as the AI continued. Titan 1 is not the only vessel. Silence shattered into disbelief. Arya's breath hitched. A Titan whispered, trembling, "There are more," and suddenly holograms ignited, showing continents, oceans, deserts, and beneath them, buried deep within Earth's crust, hidden for centuries, were shapes. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Gigantic structures shaped like sleeping beasts. Human warships. A fleet. A forgotten armada. Jackson staggered backward, tears filling his eyes, not from triumph, but from devastation, because humanity hadn't buried one monster. Humanity had buried an entire army of them. And every symbol on those ships carried the same mark carved into Titan 1's hull. Titan Legion. His voice shattered as he whispered, "We hid all of this, we hid ourselves." Because the truth was overwhelming. Humanity hadn't given up war. Humanity had locked it away. Deep. Silent. Waiting for a day like this, the AI chimed again, Protocol Titan Prime available. Authorization required to awaken global fleet. And the entire room froze, not in fear, but in heartbreak, because activating that protocol meant unleashing a force that would not stop, a force designed to crush civilizations, a force that would turn Earth into the epicenter of a galaxy-shaking war. Arya shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "If we wake them, we'll never be human again. We'll be warriors. Monsters." The legends they feared, and those words tore Jackson open, because he knew she was right. The dreadnought's core glowed brighter, the countdown dropping, 60 seconds. 50. 40. Earth didn't have time. The Titans didn't have choices. And Jackson, broken, trembling, drowning in guilt, looked at the planet below, saw the faces of people who still believed in gentle futures, saw children who still deserved tomorrow, and something inside him cracked wide open. Not rage. Not vengeance. Love. Pure, human love for a world that didn't deserve to die. That he stepped forward, hand hovering over the console, voice trembling so violently it barely existed. "I swore we would never awaken them. and tears fell, heavy and silent. But I will not let Earth die. 30 seconds. 20. 10. The dreadnought's core flared like a newborn sun. Jackson's hand dropped onto the command Authorized Titan Prime. The AI responded, tone dark, solemn, final, Global Titan Fleet Awakening. Across the planet, the ground rumbled. Mountains shook. Oceans churned. Hidden bunkers split open. Metal giants stirred beneath continents. Engines older than nations roared back to life. And in orbit, the alien dreadnought paused, not because it chose to, but because its sensors detected something impossible. Thousands of signals. Thousands of war machines. Thousands of titans rising from the depths of Earth like ghosts of a forgotten age. Arya covered her mouth, sobbing, whispering, "Dear God, what have we done?" And Jackson stared into the dark, his heart breaking as he whispered back, "We didn't start this." The stars trembled. The dreadnought flickered. Earth woke. The world shook like a living heartbeat, a deep rumble rising from the bones of the Earth itself, and every surviving human, whether standing in rubble, kneeling in ash, or huddled in broken shelters, felt the vibration crawl up their legs and settle in their chests, a warning, a promise, a pulse of something ancient waking beneath their feet, and they looked around with wide, terrified eyes because the ground was not shaking from alien fire anymore. It was shaking from something human, something buried, something powerful. The ocean lifted in towering waves as metal shapes rose from the depths, massive, dark, silent, breaking through the water like titans tearing free from centuries of sleep, and mountains cracked open, fissures glowing with blue light as enormous structures pushed upward, unfolding like wings, towers of steel rising where forests once stood, entire landscapes shifting as doors the size of cities slid apart, releasing ships that had been sealed before any living human had taken their first breath. Across deserts, panels of sand blew away in violent storms as hidden vaults erupted upward, revealing monstrous machines beneath, and in frozen tundras, sheets of ice shattered as colossal warships punched through, engines roaring back to life, drowning the world in thunder. From Titan I's command deck, the Titans stared at the holographic map as thousands of new signals ignited across the surface of the planet, each one blinking brighter, stronger, louder, until the entire screen was flooded with blue markers, an army waking, a fleet humanity had sworn never to touch again, and the air in the room grew thick with disbelief, sorrow, horror, because no one had imagined the scale of what their ancestors had done. No one had guessed that Earth was not just a home. Earth was a vault, a tomb, a cage holding back the most feared power in the galaxy. Arya pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "We were never peaceful, we were protected from ourselves." And the pain in her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Another Titan sank to his knees, staring at the glowing signals, whispering in a broken voice, "We were sleeping on a graveyard of giants." And the truth of those words hit Jackson so hard he had to grip the console to stay standing, his heart shaking, his breath ragged, because he understood now, humanity hadn't escaped its violent past, they had buried it under their feet, under their cities, under their very lives, hoping the universe would never force them to open that door again. But the door was open. And there was no closing it. Above Earth, the alien dreadnought, moments away from firing its planetary killer, froze mid-charge as its scanners detected an impossible surge of power, its red core flickering in confusion, its massive frame trembling under the tsunami of energy rising from Earth. The bridge crew stared in horror as their displays filled with thousands of human war signatures, each one powerful enough to rival a fleet. Panic rippled like fire through the ship, soldiers shouting, voices breaking, and the alien general, once so arrogant, now stood pale and shaking, his voice barely more than a terrified whisper. "We didn't destroy them, we woke them." And those words were not strategy, not analysis. They were a confession of doom. On Earth's surface, survivors lifted their eyes as the sky changed color, shifting from smoky gray to deep, electric blue as engines ignited, hundreds, thousands, lighting the clouds from below. Children who had been crying moments before fell silent, staring upward in awe, and parents held them tighter, torn between terror and hope, because something immense was rising. The first of the Titan warships broke through the atmosphere, engines roaring like the heartbeat of a god. A ship so large it cast a shadow that swallowed whole cities. and behind it came dozens more, then hundreds, each one shaped like a blade meant to cut through the galaxy itself. People pointed with trembling hands. Some collapsed to their knees. Some whispered prayers. Some simply cried, because the sky wasn't empty anymore. The sky belonged to humanity again. Inside Titan 1, the AI spoke in a voice softer than before, almost reverent. Global Titan fleet fully awakened. Total vessels, 1,247. The number hit Jackson like a punch to the soul. Over 1,000 world-ending ships. Over 1,000 reminders of what humans once were. Over 1,000 weapons built to make galaxies bow. His chest tightened with agony because this wasn't victory. This was a tragedy 3 centuries in the making. Arya turned toward him, her voice shaking, full of fear and heartbreak. Jackson, we can't control them. Can we? And Jackson's silence was the answer. Titan 1 was the command vessel. Titan 1 was the key. Titan 1 was the signal. Whatever it did, the others would follow. Not because of loyalty, but because of design. Jackson closed his eyes, tears burning behind them, and saw the faces of the dead. Millions who never had a chance to scream, millions who died without knowing why, and inside him something broke, something fragile and human, something gentle and kind, the part of him that still wanted peace, still wanted the world to stay innocent. But innocence was gone, burned, buried, destroyed. And now humanity stood on the edge of becoming what the galaxy feared most. Not victims, not survivors, but executioners. The dreadnought's core flickered weakly, its power collapsing under the overwhelming pressure of the awakened fleet. And its cannons dimmed, its engines sputtered, and the alien general collapsed into his chair, tears of terror filling his eyes, whispering to no one. We should have left them alone. His voice shook with regret. Too late, too useless, too human in its fear. The last of the alien fleet broke formation, ships turning, engines burning desperately as they attempted to flee, to escape, to vanish into the stars. But the sky was no longer theirs. The sky answered to a different power now. Titan 1's engines roared, echoing like thunder through space, and the awakened fleet mirrored it, engines flaring in unison, ready to launch. Thousands of weapons powered up, ready to fire. Thousands of targeting systems locked onto the fleeing ships. The galaxy's worst nightmare wasn't a story anymore. It was real, alive, awake, and waiting for one man's command. Jackson's hand hovered above the control. His fingers shook. His chest heaved. His soul screamed. Arya stepped closer, barely breathing, voice breaking under the weight of destiny. If you give that order, humanity will never go back. And Jackson felt every word like a knife in his heart. He saw the past. He saw the future. He saw the thin, fragile line between survival and destruction. He whispered, his voice trembling, filled with love and pain. We didn't choose this war. Then his eyes hardened, not with hatred, but with unbearable sorrow. But we will end it. His hand dropped. Titan 1 surged forward. The fleet followed, and across the stars, every alien civilization felt it in their bones. Humanity was no longer silent. Humanity was no longer sleeping. Humanity was coming.